Early in the collage process, as I began to feel a real connection with each of the subjects, it occurred to me that I could also honor them through poetry, as well as through visual art. After completing 4 portraits, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Cynthia Graham Hurd, and Rayshard Brooks, I had the artwork lined up on a couch in my work area. And that's when this first poem was born. Hosting the Stolen, for Breonna, Tamir, Cynthia, Rayshard, all the rest. Lacking the melanin required for membership, I have become host to meetings of the stolen. With no preset time or day, they come to me late and early, straight from drive-through lanes and snow-scudded city parks, from Bible circles, from sleep-tangled sheets, from family visits to the treacherous Jim Crow South. Navigating the fields of judgment, river of lies, they line my squat couch to share their aspirations, their daily joys, daughter dancing, skittles and sweet tea, their undoings. Laying down the weapon of my whiteness, I follow each doomed soul into the reeds of sorrow, knowing I must emerge alone, must ready to welcome the next. One thing that really struck me in the wake of Breonna Taylor's murder was the way that the media began to pick apart her entire life, serving it up as entertainment. In this next poem, I imagine a museum with a new exhibit devoted to Breonna. The title of the poem is a run-in title, meaning that the title runs into the first line. The poem is titled, "The White Docent Walks Us Through the New Taylor Wing," and there's a character within the poem, the character of the white docent, who I imagine as Southern. The white docent walks us through the new Taylor Wing at the Museum of the Brutally Taken. The exhibit houses a permanent display of her relics, EMT attire, yellowed spray of blooms, notes from Jamarcus, her reputation, all splayed bare behind plates of cratered glass. The walls, you'll note, are draped in purple, draped in floral spools of satin befitting the tombs of the royals. A special section is devoted to her shoes, but first, please do pause to study this small, jeweled reliquary. Through the crystal lid you'll plainly see 8 bullets, artfully arranged on a field of velvet, meant to evoke a single daisy. Here in the main gallery, our most hallowed piece. Yes, her bedsheet. How it's being transformed by her blood, the gun scorch. Why, it's practically a Turin shroud. Squinting, we swear we almost see Breonna's face. The Killing of Tamir Rice by Cleveland Police is a casebook in the tragedy of implicit bias. From the initial report of a potentially dangerous person with a gun in the park to the officers speeding into that park and opening fire on Tamir before their cruiser had even stopped, definitely bias was at play. I can't imagine that the outcome would have been the same had Tamir been a 12-year-old white boy. This poem is titled Footprints in Snow. Footprints in Snow, Elegy for Tamir Rice. In drifted fields, my mind spirals, leaping to that child's footprints in November snow, circling, labyrinthine as he ducks and points. Can you hear his laughter? A broken toy gun. Oh, to slow time, to halt the skidding cruiser, seize the fatal bullet from its chamber, freeze this moment in autumn ice. Oh, to rewind that day, back before the gazebo, before the blood, reroute his steps back to rec center potter's wheel, crochet table, to undo the fateful swap of phone for gun, to keep him safe. But, being a boy and just 12, of course he answers that gun's siren call. Boys always, despite mother's warnings, answer. Once, our son's friend Michael, barred from play weapons, gnawed his toast into a pistol, pointing, pow-powing it at breakfast. They praised him for resourcefulness, that blue-eyed, freckled boy. But this gone child? They say his blackness, his bigness at just 12, sealed his fate. They blame him for giving that white cop cause to shoot. An interesting detail about the collage of Tamir, as was stated in the poem, he was killed nearby a gazebo, and I was walking by a gazebo in a local park when I saw something glistening on the ground, and they were confetti stars. Someone had celebrated a birthday or a graduation, and I collected them and incorporated them into the collage portrait of Tamir. It was another case of sort of divine intervention, materials being sent to me from what I believe is above. Like so many other 7-year-old girls, Ayanna Stanley Jones was a lover of all things Disney. She was asleep beneath a Hannah Montana blanket on her grandma Myrtilla's couch when Detroit police mistakenly burst into their apartment looking for a murder suspect. Ayanna died as a result. When I was working on her collage, I was out walking and I glanced down to find a small brass heart on the ground. I knew that it was meant to be a part of my tribute to her. In the photo of Ayanna, I was taken both with her beautiful face and the intricate braids framing that face. I crocheted braids and created the hair ornaments from a Disney store flyer that came in the mail. My poem for Ayanna, a series of sonnets, is titled Ayanna's Braids. Ayanna's Braids. 1. To start, a disclaimer. There is no room, no space, no place for that cop's expert lies. His yarn spun round Myrtilla, sticky as any web. Nor for the lawyer, his gall to call a racked grandmum's testimony show, to brand her fool. You will not find that TV crew, lenses eager to capture reality. One more little black girl murdered. This space is sacred. I claim just a slim slice for my white self, as crafter of images, grief chronicler, This poem belongs to them, those mothers, grandmothers, violently unchilded. Now, a question. Will you dare enter the depths of black grief? 2. Picture a skein of black grief. Unspooling, it would entwine the earth 10 times, braiding continent to continent, a poison shawl, an inky shroud. In the video, the white yarning expert reminds me, all crochet projects start with making a chain. Fingering soft black fibers, I summon the whisper cries of the taken. Black tears in the blackness of ships' holds, chain-bloodied ankles, wrists. Black mothers draped like wailing blankets across small pink coffins. The 5mm hook slips. I am finger clumsy, chaining threads to craft Ayana's braids. I want them perfect as Myrtilla's. 3. Myrtilla's fingers were nimble, careful not to tug Ayana's braids that, never suspecting it would be her last morning. Sweet girl in a kitchen chair, maybe she ate waffles, pinkies, maple sticky. Grief owns that kitchen now. Squatting by the stove, it scrapes painted peonies off the good teacups, crushing all but one to bone dust. At midnight, grief glows ferocious, a flash grenade capsizing the front porch, shrieking the living room walls with rage. Her scorched couch submerged in a sea of tears, Myrtilla sinks. Far from shore, her wails summon, call back to Alberta, to Mamie, the countless. And they answer, each voice a separate strand in an endless braid, each cry lifting her, inviting her to join the infinite chorus of the left behind. Myrtilla keens for her taken love, her bullet-robbed Ayana, and the great harmonic swell rises, a grief scream ululation that cloaks the sun, eclipses the earth in black grief. Imagine an Afghan crocheted from black grief. Fields after fields of granny squares in the most sumptuous hues. Strong black yarn would flow through those fields like blood through black veins. Blocking the stars, that Afghan would reduce the vast universe to one grief-draped couch. By all accounts, Elijah McClain was a special soul, a young man who volunteered at a local shelter, playing his violin to calm the animals. Until his death at the hands of Aurora, Colorado police and EMTs. In this poem, I imagine the silence in that shelter following Elijah's death. Shelter cats mourn for Elijah McClain. The old Abyssinian clears her throat. Her whiskers flick impatient as kittens dart weave in eager rows. They've coaxed her into sharing their favorite fable, the one about the black angel and how he poured his music through cage mesh, his melodies kissing temple tufts, caressing silk backs. Soft as gauze felt, mouse cheeks, his tunes were shields for strays' ears, softening the sharp buzz-clank of armored doors, soothing the hissing mule of new arrivals. Too young, too new to have known his bright there-ness, they shiver still in his ever-absence, wondering at the cold silence of his lost violin. As a black trans woman, Tatiana Hall fell victim to a dual epidemic: violence against those of color and members of the LGBTQ+ community. In her short life, she touched the hearts of many. She's remembered as having a bright spirit and big dreams, including her aspirations to create a clothing line. My poem for Tatiana. Of Boys and Beauty. If butterflies could scream, I wonder, would boys still rip their wings off? Would they, laughing, grind iridescence between grimy fingers, appendage shreds dropping to dirt? Would they still savage milkweed just to snatch a chrysalis, smear it against asphalt, scorch it with sunlight through a polished bottle shard? When girls scream, some boys will grin and slit open a cocoon, pinch its wriggling tenant, squish her in an eager fist, squelching beauty. Does beauty threaten these boys, frighten them? Does it echo the softness boys strive so hard to hide? For a time, one boy-raised child managed to mask softness in layers of swagger. But that tight cocoon bruised more than all those other boys' fists. Besides, beauty, insistent, always emerged in the swan neck, arched brow, the joy at purple, despite all efforts to suppress it. At last, shredding this cocoon, a new self emerged, a glint and gossamer, Tatiana. But her bright life was brief as a butterfly's. They found her, wings torn off, colors weeping onto blacktop. Entomologists claim that larvae feel no pain as their bodies digest themselves, that butterflies have no memory of the former self. Creating my portrait of Eleanor Bumpurs, I was limited to a single photo that I was able to find on the internet. In that photo, the sorrow, the careworn quality of her life is so apparent in her face, and I was tempted to change her expression in my portrait, but I realized that that would not be honoring the truth of her life. What I chose to do instead of changing her was to surround her with a bouquet of flowers. My poem for Eleanor is titled Eleanor's Hands. Eleanor's hands, broad with work, are strong and brown, forever moving, kneading great hills of dough, breading mountains of okra, thwacking rugs with the woven beater. But Eleanor's hands are gentle, too, licked fingertips leafing testament pages, working the comb just so to smooth and section, to twist and braid generations of squirming girls, careful not to pull, doling a butterscotch melt reward, till, money scarce, Eleanor's hands, counting coins on torn vinyl cloth, worry her empty wrist. The watch, a wedding gift from her lost love, hocked to make March rent. In fall, ripping tear-stained eviction papers, whispers in her head, pounding at her door, she's crouching, naked, beside the worn brown sofa. But then, trembling, Eleanor's hands grasp a knife as armored cops bludgeon her peace, no social worker words to soothe her. Their rifles leap, and, fear-mute, she raises her fist to shouts of, "Drop it! Drop the knife!" One swift arc, her blade scraping plexi shield, and Eleanor's hand, struck by buckshot, bursts, pomegranate seeds spattering scuffed gray linoleum, graffitiing cops' tactical gear, as a second shot tears through the awed silence and Eleanor's chest. Beside the casket, Mary Bumpers strokes her mother's silky hair. A single tear kisses the wrist draped across Eleanor's gloved stump. 4 children, the eldest framed by a white carnation heart, turn to stone. In my dreams she is whole. Resplendent in blooms she glows, magnolia and sage, sunflowers and white roses spill from Eleanor's hands. The details of Victor Demarius Steen's death by Pensacola police officer are almost too horrible to consider. I would rather think about the details I know of Victor's life. He was a sweet young 17-year-old with college aspirations who was pedaling his bike home from a relative's after helping plan a child's birthday party. In this poem, though, I felt it necessary to face up to the horrors that Victor endured, and that so many other Black Americans have faced. The poem is titled, Never Ask a Black Mother, for Cassandra Steen. If you could foretell another future, who would your Victor be? A high school grad, an architect, proud dad to 2 giggling girls? Do you sit, still, his pictures before you, tracing the seashell whirl of his ear, studying his notched brow, arched in endless wonder? Or have you tucked his images away like Mary, to ponder in your heart? And how does your half-heart manage to beat, absent your stolen son? Do you retreat to dreams? And in those dreams does he appear, a knee-bobbled toddler to make you beam? Or do you flee sleep, its darkest dreaming, your child spilled out on asphalt, no time to gasp, cry out for you from beneath that cop's cruiser? Did you really believe he'd heed your mother warnings about dark nights and lightless bikes, your lullaby, comply, comply, at 17? Would it matter when all it takes is one cop looking to make the streets safe from black boys peddling by? Dare I ask, can you forgive your husband for teaching the child to ride a bloody bike? Latasha Harlins was just 15 years old when she was shot in the back of the head by a Los Angeles shopkeeper who wrongly suspected her of shoplifting. The tragedy of her death was only compounded by the light sentence given to that shopkeeper when she was found guilty of manslaughter. She was sentenced to community service and a fine, a sentence lighter than that given to a man who was convicted of kicking a dog. No safety in numbers for Latasha Harlins. Is it deflection, this impulse pulling me again to process her loss via numbers? Safer, perhaps, than inviting in images. Blood-splashed backpack, scatter of snack cakes where she fell. I managed to push those back, keep calculating, even as the numbers misbehave. No balance, no logic, just jangled equations lined up in infinite, deadly patterns. Her shot-shattered skull, $2 clutched in a dead girl's fist. No solving a problem that starts. One black girl plus one shopkeeper divide by implicit bias. Add 12 ounces of Tropicana. If a bullet costs 50 cents, how can 15 years of dreams be worth just $1.75?